Hey guys, I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I'm here to talk to you about a graphic novel. A little over a week ago, about a week and a half ago, I talked about the complete Age of Apocalypse epic Prelude. There are, in total, 4 or 5 books now. I knew earlier, now I don't remember. That collect the entire Age of Apocalypse storyline. And I talked in detail about what this storyline is about in my previous video, so go back 7 or so videos and you'll find it. Today I am here to talk about Volume 1 of this series of books. It's about the same size as the Prelude book, and we got the number 1 right there. I didn't talk about this last time, but the Prelude book, the pages were actually of a lower quality than here. Here we've got the kind of slick pages. I don't know how else to describe it. And on the Prelude book, they were thicker. It was almost not quite like a newspaper, but closer to that than this. So higher quality paper here. I don't know what the deal was there, if they decided after putting out the Prelude that they were going to make the paper a little bit better, or if they did the Prelude volume after they did all these. I don't know. Here we are doing Volume 1. Now, after reading this, actually in the middle of reading this, something occurred to me. I really wish I could go back in time and change what I said in my video about the Prelude volume, because one of the things I said in that review was that that book was basically unnecessary and that you didn't have to read it. After reading this book, I really wish I hadn't said that, because the Prelude book is at least a little bit necessary. If you recall, the long and short of it is, in the Prelude book, about half of it is just kind of fluff, and the other half is lead up to the Age of Apocalypse. So if you just jump right into the Age of Apocalypse stuff, you don't know what's going on. You would need to know about the Legion quest. You would need to read the Prelude book to really see, okay, this is how this alternate reality happened. This book is what made me realize that the Prelude is not fluff, that is not unnecessary. This book is unnecessary. Completely, totally, 100%, you do not need to read this. It has, I believe, 8 issues in it. 2 issues of X-Men Chronicles, 2 issues of Tales of the Age of Apocalypse, and 2 issues of X-Men, and then a 4-issue Blink miniseries. All of these comics were put out after the conclusion of the Age of Apocalypse, with the exception of the 2 issues of X-Men Chronicles. Both of those were happening during the Age of Apocalypse. And basically, all of this book, this entire book, is just meant to kind of add extra material to a world that we already knew, but it's not necessary material. It's basically like when you build a house and you put up the walls and stuff and the insulation, this is like a coat of paint. You don't need the paint on the wall. If it's off-white, it's still technically fine. This is like a coat of paint to make it blue or green or whatever. It's not necessary, but it makes it a little bit nicer, I guess. And that's maybe the best thing that I can say about this book. A lot of this book is actually, if you are reading these in order, if you read Prelude, Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., then if you don't know anything about the Age of Apocalypse going into them, a lot of this book is going to be very confusing, because it presumes that you know a decent amount about the Age of Apocalypse. And I do know a little bit about the Age of Apocalypse. I've read some of the single issues before reading these trades, so I was okay, but I fear that somebody who maybe picks this up and they've never heard of the Age of Apocalypse, but they say, well, this looks cool, Colossus is wearing a headband, then they might pick it up and they might be a little confused. Well, what's going on here? I don't understand. There is a text piece at the end of the book that I remember it was published in a lot of the single issues of the Age of Apocalypse, and it's basically explaining kind of from the creative side of thing how the Age of Apocalypse came to be, who first came up with the idea, and it sort of sums up in a few paragraphs the Legion Quest storyline. So I guess if you have not read the Prelude book and you haven't read anything from the Legion Quest, you might be okay, but the problem is that text piece comes at the very end. And it would have been really nice if we could have had a little bit of an explanation about Legion time traveling to kill Magneto and he accidentally kills Charles Xavier. It would have been nice, I think, to have some of that going on in the beginning of this book to kind of bring you up to speed. Really, unless you're a completist and you have volumes 2, 3, and 4, and you absolutely have to have volume 1 so that it doesn't look ridiculous on your shelf, then I'm going to say don't bother picking this up. This completely skips all of the original Age of Apocalypse stuff, and this mainly just picks up books that kind of set before all of the main event of the Age of Apocalypse and kind of fills in some spaces that we really didn't need to be filled in anyway. One particular issue in here, an X-Men annual, has Nate Gray traveling back in time into the Age of Apocalypse. That one was the most unreadable for me because out of all the Age of Apocalypse stuff, I am the least familiar with Nate Gray. And this was kind of picking up after Nate Gray had already come to the main 616 universe, and it was kind of acting like you need to know who this guy is, you need to know a little bit about him, a little bit about his supporting cast, stuff like that, and I was really confused there. I wasn't even faux confused, where it's like, well, if you haven't read anything, but I have. No, I haven't read a whole lot of X-Men at all, so I was a little confused about that issue, and I wish maybe it could have been placed somewhere else in one of these books. I don't know. Ultimately, this book, don't bother unless you just got $30 to burn out of your pocket and you really like the Age of Apocalypse, then get this book. But as far as the necessary story, I would say it probably doesn't even start until volume 2. One more thing. Apocalypse. Once again, Apocalypse does not show up in this book. You might get disappointed if you have read 2 of these Age of Apocalypse books and you're like, okay, I want some Apocalypse. We didn't get much of him in the prelude, just 1 page. Then you pick up this book and he's not in it at all. And I don't know how much I've read from the Age of Apocalypse, maybe a third of the original stuff. I don't know if Apocalypse even shows up in any of those minis at all. I kind of hope he does, but it's looking more and more like it's one of those things where Apocalypse is more of a presence in the background where you don't really see him, and it's all these other characters that you're focusing on, how this world has changed them, but you're not really getting a whole lot of Apocalypse. So if you want your be-all, end-all Apocalypse story, this is not it, and maybe the Age of Apocalypse itself is not it. I don't know. We will see as I keep reading in these stories. So hopefully roughly a week from now I will be reviewing the next volume of the complete Age of Apocalypse for you guys, and I'll let you know what is up. So until then, I hope you guys will come back tomorrow to check out another one of my videos. I will see you then.